And everybody who lives there and everyone who works there is very pleasant.
You're more or less completely on your own as far as living there. Taking care of it. See, you talk about the memory thing, you wouldn't be on they're not on medication and stuff like that. They're just living there. Okay.
And everybody is very congenial and nice.
Okay.
Yeah. I can't remember anybody's names, but.
Well, at least one of
Yes.
them.
Well, Lisa and her husband are coming this afternoon, and they're the only ones things are going.
We don't talk about.
We want a full report.
Yeah.
That's to get her that
Next time
early.
I didn't check on your house and leave for you. You go out and check.
I love to house. Yeah.
Then he went to the bathroom, he was here.
He is.
I was.
Going to Indianapolis tonight and stay over and leave it bright early in the morning.
That would be easier one.
Yeah. One thing, get out of Dayton, but this is about 2 months ago, and across out of Dayton, no racetrack.
Yeah. Next time.
Maybe.
What do you say you're doing?
I'm going out of town tomorrow to see my sister in Florida.
Oh,
Yeah. They were asking about my trip. Good to see you.
thank
She
you.
didn't know that.
Thank you. So everything was fine.
Sure.
It's nice.
Well, last week they called. But otherwise, everything, but otherwise, it looks last year.
Your ears burning?
Well, that kind of something we've done today, so he's going to come with me. I'm going to go now. Well, good, it's good to see you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Hi, Jane.
No.
How you doing?
You're doing fine.
Here we go. Lisa's great.
Nice to meet you.
Roberta's daughter. Okay.
Nice to meet you.
We're glad to do this.
Me too. It's a beautiful day.
It is. We need some sun. Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing good. We're good, thank you.
Welcome to First Universalist of New Madison on this pretend spring day. First weekend in February, it feels like spring. What is going on? Nice to have Cecil here. And Lisa. Everybody's here. Derek always brings out a crowd. That's good to see. Do we have any announcements? Okay, first of all, I have a cold. My wife's paranoid, so she made me take a COVID test, and it's not COVID, it's just a cold. But I'm like dousing myself, so stay 5-10 feet away and try not to expose anybody.
All the things that used to get us sick are still out there.
Yes, the old things. But if you remember, and this is pretty well indelibly printed on me, the time during the COVID epidemic when everybody disinfected their hands and wore masks, there was like hardly any flu going around. There was hardly any colds going around because everybody was careful. So, and COVID is still there and it's coming back. So I still wear a mask at Kroger's or Walmart or wherever. But I'm kind of negligent. I disinfect the cart when I go in. But every time you handle something on the shelf and put it in your cart, somebody else may have sneezed on it. And I need to start disinfecting when I come back out of the store again. Somebody gave it to me and it wasn't my wife, so we'll have to see. We're still working on the 7 principles. If you're not aware of that, talk to us afterwards. The annual meeting for the Unitarian Universalists is contemplating a change in their kind of broad outline of what Unitarian Universalism is. Some people are objecting to that. It could be because they just don't understand the change, or it could be because as people want to be, they are resistant to any change. If you have any questions or want to discuss it, please bring those questions and concerns forward. And our delegate will be responsible for taking our opinion to the meeting. The annual meeting this year is going to be all online, so it's just a Zoom or however they do that. So we will be effectively attending like that. Okay. Yeah, Mike.
I just completed our annual certification to UUA, so we're still an official church and everything's in order there.
Yes.
And also wanted to also mention, I heard from Lou and
good.
And he and Denise are in California, and they gave everyone their good wishes, and they'll try to be here within the next few weeks.
Good, excellent. And I hope, did he say anything about what was going on in Michigan?
No reports there.
Okay.
They're in California, probably visiting their daughter and grandchildren.
They have family health problems in Michigan with the parents, so we hope that's going well. That's always on our minds. Okay, our welcome is 476. Before the wonders of life, we acknowledge our failures to see and to revere. Before the sanctities of life, we are ashamed of our disrespects and our indignities. Before the gifts of life, we own that we have made choices of lesser goods, and here today seek the gifts of the Spirit. Before the heroisms of life, we would be enlarged to new devotion. All right. Our prelude is God of grace, God of glory. And it's really nice to have Roberta. They released her from the Brethren's home and let her drive today. When they get somebody in there, they like to keep them, so. God of grace, God of glory. Derek is speaking today on harmful people with good ideas, so I pretty much went with good and evil. It's pretty hard to find images of good and evil on the computer, and it's hard to kind of expand on that. But if you can read a little quote that's up here, a lie doesn't become truth, wrong doesn't become right, and evil doesn't become good just because it is accepted by the majority. Kind of a thought to keep in mind as we approach our election season. The chalice lighting, ember of hope and love set ablaze. What if sometimes it's not about a light in the darkness? What if sometimes it's about sparking potential into possibility and possibility into existence? What if sometimes the flame that burns in the chalice of our faith is nothing less than the ember of hope and nothing more than love set ablaze? What if sometimes all we need to do is follow this flame, one among scores, hundreds, thousands of steadily flickering flames across the land and among so many people, on the way to justice and into the land of peace? What if we dare to kindle that chalice? And I want you to keep that in mind, that no matter how bleak things look on even the political or historical or environmental scale, there is always hope. All right, opening hymn is number 1, May Nothing Evil Cross the Door. Sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep hate out and hold love in. That's a hard one to sing, particularly if you can't sing. All right, affirmation, prayer for a peace vigil. Eternal Spirit, from whom all things come and to whom all things return, we gather today as a religious people from various traditions. We gather as people reaching out across our difference, sharing our commitment to compassion and truth. Together, despite the record of violence and distrust in the society around us, in this silent moment, let us give thanks for the blessings of our lives, for the home and family, for faith and meaningful work, we give thanks. For our ability to gather in this way as people of peace, we give thanks. In this silent moment, we lift up those places in our own lives and in our own hearts where burdens reside. May there be peace, may there be grace, May there be support in this silent moment. Let us cry out for the suffering of our world, for refugees fleeing oppression and children haunted by cruelty, for the wars across the waters far away from us, and for the battlegrounds created in nearby cities, for brutality and corruption, violence and distrust. O Spirit of life and love, receive our cry. Hear our cry of spirit and help us to become instruments of thy love. Let us speak in solidarity with the disempowered, and join the voices of compassion and reason, or a world filled of cruelty and greed. Let us set aside hate and devote our lives to the ways of peace and justice. Let us, O Spirit, encourage peace to grow in any garden it can find. Let us remember the tragedies of our days and commit to building a better world. Let us be emissaries of justice, ambassadors of compassion, agents of thee, O Spirit. In the name of all that is holy, may it be so. Those are kind of long, and we'll go back, and I know some people like the traditional ones, and we'll kind of jump back and forth between those. But these have some thoughts, I think, which are important to hold as we go through our church process. All right, our children's story. Actually, here's your, this is going to be quite a bit of humor today, and I'm not sure why. I guess when I don't feel good, I try to laugh. So here's your problem. Somebody put the switch to evil instead of good. If only it was that simple. Because we are talking about harmful people and good ideas from Derek, and because this is the first Sunday of the month, or Fish Sunday, I'm going to give you a hopefully if it plays, a fish story.
Guys like me, you like to eavesdrop. I walk into restaurants and people sitting at a table. Where would you like to sit? I want to sit by them because it's fun, especially eavesdropping on women. They talk about good stuff, fun stuff, interesting stuff. See, guys are always the same. Well, you know what play they should have called? Shut up, you work at McDonald's, you don't know. Women talk about good stuff. You want to know what he did to me? Yes! Of course, when you yell out like that, then they're going to know you were eavesdropping. But it's funny. From my eavesdropping, I've come to the conclusion that we're starting to worry about way too many things in our world. Some of the things we choose to worry about might not be quite as important as we think. I'll give you this example. Actually, I heard this on the radio. PETA, the group, not the bread, PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and we need that organization because if two squirrels should bump into each other, one really should say, a scoozy. But PETA, they had their spokesperson on the radio, this lady, she said they want to ban fishing. She said fishing is cruel because fish have the same central nervous system as people, so they feel pain like us. She then went on to say, how would you like it if you were walking down the street and your lip was impaled and you're yanked out of this environment into a different environment where you couldn't breathe? And I started thinking, well, that would mean that you were a fish! Smarter we should be, and if we're not, maybe it's better that we're gone. Because if you're walking down the street with your buddies and you see some food on a hook, walk around it! I think we should be a little bit suspicious anyway if all of a sudden out of the blue there's a sandwich bobbing in front of us. We're worried about way too many things. Sometimes we try so hard to worry, we end up worrying the wrong way. I overheard a couple guys talking about this 940-pound man. First guy goes, 940 pounds, that is too bad. The other guy goes, yeah, He almost made it to 1,000. And then I started thinking about the PETA lady, and if she was correct, there really was something out there fishing for humans. Could you imagine their surprise if they caught that guy? Oh, you know he would be mounted and hanging on a wall. Well, that there's your largemouth, big-bellied human. I caught him on a turkey spinner. You almost pulled me out of the spaceship.
All right, that was Fred Klett. He's a Mormon comedian who does clean comedy, which is hard to find, clean comedy. He has bunches of skits if you want to find him on YouTube. I know fishing is dear and near to the heart of many people here. So I apologize if that was sacrilegious, but I got a kick out of it. So, okay, joys and concerns. Our typical ones, we still have our Ukraine sunflowers. We're still at a stalemate in the Ukraine. Interestingly enough, the UK or the EU has voted to supply Ukraine with $50 billion over the next 5 years or 4 years. I think they are anticipating a negative outcome in the future US elections, where if our support dwindles, which it is being held up in Congress right now, and we can discuss that if anybody needs to about what the future of the world will hold if the Ukraine falls to Russian intimidation. Israel, everybody seems entrenched. We're going to light a candle for Israel and for Palestine and for Gaza. That area of the Gaza Strip is almost entirely destroyed. Nothing left. 27,000 casualties so far. Most of those women and children. Nobody, the Palestinians are not saying we're going to give back the hostages. The Israelis are not saying they're going to impose a peace process. Both sides are understandable in their rationale, but peace doesn't come if you don't give. Nobody gets everything in a negotiation. You have to give a little. And I'm not sure what the stimulus is to make that happen. Anyone else? Yes.
I'll ask for a candle to be lit. I was telling Tim and Chaz when I came in this morning that I've been on jury duty all week and I have to go back on Monday. The only thing I can say beyond that is it is a murder trial. It's one thing to preach about truth and justice and then be asked to be part of a group of people who have to determine what the truth is and what is the just response. It's easier from the pulpit than it is in the jury chamber.
Yeah. The legal system is pretty complicated to navigate. Anybody who's had any involvement in that knows that. But there's still hopefully justice at the end. Mercy is part of the process. And we hope that, and a murder trial is always a heinous experience anyway. So we'll ask for understanding and support for the jury and for the judge and for the family of the victim, who most of the time have to sit and listen to the gory details over and over again. So this is in Wayne County, which has had some pretty horrendous experiences. Richmond. Anything else? Okay. Oh, I guess I should throw in the two girls that I met, homeless girls that I managed to get rid of. They got thrown out of their place where they were. They got thrown out of her mother's house. Can you imagine how bad you have to be thrown out of your mother's house? So I'm lighting a candle for them. They're living in my shack again with no running water. And only, they have electricity, so they have heat and a refrigerator, but that's just the basics. I don't understand it. They seem to be doing a little bit better, because I said you can't come back unless you clean up the mess you left when you left, which they did do that, so maybe they're making a step forward. As they say, hope springs eternal, and fools rush in where wise people fear to tread. That would be me. So, all right, one final candle for those hopes and fears, those things that you can't express to yourself, maybe you can't even express to anybody else. This church is here as a community. We want to be able to help you if we can, whether it's spiritually, financially, or just in moral support. All right, Eric is with us. Harmful people with good ideas. Looking forward to hearing on that, and let me get everything off. And our slide is, which is worse, doing evil in the name of good or doing good in the name of evil?
Tim's pretty good at selecting slides, however, I'm not going to quite be in that territory this morning. I do want to say thank you to the El Dorado Church for giving me the freedom to come up here today and give the message. And a reminder that the next time I will be back in this pulpit will actually be Palm Sunday in March. So, the reading appointed for today comes from Paul's letter to the Philippians. Beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Now, I've spoken about this work of art before, but if you do ever have the chance to be at the Third Unitarian Church of Chicago, you can see a remarkable collection of 17 murals depicting a collection of people that are described on the plaque as saints of liberal religion. And it's a remarkable, if eclectic, collection, including figures like Susan B. Anthony, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus, and Woodrow Wilson. It's an amazing body of artwork, but it is not without its challenges. But before we get to them, I want to tell you a story that may help us think about the issue. So there is an art film named Tar. I'm not probably pronouncing it right because I think it's supposed to be a French word. But it features Cate Blanchett as a composer who teaches at the eminent music college Juilliard. And after speaking her praises about Johann Sebastian Bach, a nervous music student named Max raises his hand to respond and says, "I'm not much into Bach." So she prods Max, smugly insisting that he needs to say more to defend his opinion. And Max replies, "I'm going to say Bach's misogynistic lifestyle makes it kind of impossible for me to take his music seriously. He insisted that his wife have 20 children for him." That's kind of extreme. But what does it mean for a music student to link Bach's musical works to the way he treated his wife? Now, in the movie, the Juilliard professor responds to Max in front of the entire classroom and says, "I am unclear as to how he behaved in his marital bed relates to his skill composing the B minor." The back and the forth highlights something going on in our wider culture, maybe our community, and even in our faith community, where there are debates about different people's life and works, between their personal ethics and their creative achievements. In the movie, the professor asks the class, "Can an A minor chord be misogynistic?" And she lets the question linger out there, unanswered, and I'm thinking because there really is no answer. There's no scheme for entangling the threads of influence in a work of art, and there is no solvent to dissolve the contradictions that make up people's human lives. Among the saints portrayed at the Third Unitarian Church of Chicago, there is, for example, Thomas Jefferson. And on the one hand, He wrote a classic of Unitarian religious literature, the Jefferson Bible, which is what they call a harmonization. He's not the only person to do these things, but it took the 4 Christian Gospels, combined them into one narrative, a single narrative, focusing, in Thomas Jefferson's case, on the teachings of Jesus and largely eliminating all of the supernatural miracle stories. Now, there's also Jefferson's role in articulating a basic religious freedom in our society, separating the institutions of religion from the institutions of government. On the other hand, he owned slaves, fathered children on at least one of them, and these black children lived as slaves that he owned. As a result of all of this, a Unitarian Universalist district, that's one of our regional bodies, that was once called the Thomas Jefferson District, removed his name from the district. And as of today, every single church in the Unitarian Universalist Association that was named after Thomas Jefferson has removed his name from their church. The one in Louisville, the one in Charlottesville, Virginia, the one in Dallas, Texas. There's more. The one in Dallas was the last one. It was still using the Jefferson name last year, but I want to check and make sure, and they have renamed themselves All People's Church. His name is removed from each and every one. Now, there are parallel issues with other people in the Chicago artwork. For example, Woodrow Wilson. He dedicated much of his life to building peace and understanding between nations as a way of preventing future war. As a politician, he also promoted racial segregation laws. And Princeton University's Woodrow Wilson School of International Affairs in more recent years removed Wilson's name from the school. Gandhi, he's also in the murals. Gandhi brought about the remarkable nonviolent independence of India from the British Empire. By a lot of people's calculations, that could have turned into a bloodbath very easily. And there are multiple credible reports that Gandhi abusively vented his anger at his wife. So some peace institutes have removed his name from their institute. Now, I do not think that a musical chord can be misogynistic. I'm not a musician, and my next class in my doctoral studies will be about the writings of John Calvin, despite his active involvement in the execution of the Unitarian theologian Michael Servetus, who he had burned at the stake. People who have done harmful things have populated my ministry with good ideas. Think about it. People who have done harmful things have populated my ministry with good ideas. This situation are benefiting from the ideas of people who some way violated the lives of others. It's troubling. Now, it didn't trouble other people. Like St. Augustine wrote to his fellow Christians that wherever you find the truth, it is the Lord's. Or there's also a concept from the Jewish Talmud where when the Jewish people left Egypt with Egyptian gold and silver, according to the story at the time of their liberation, the Talmud says we take claim of the good from wherever we discover it to further the just teaching of the Torah, which I guess comes close to one of these. In our own denomination, it is humbling
that we have lauded Jefferson as a saint who expounded religious freedom while not quite seeing that his theology of freedom didn't extend to everybody. The idea that we can just take the good without ever thinking about the other things it's connected to doesn't serve us that well. There are links that you can sometimes find between different parts of, for example, Jefferson's life, his writings, his deeds, and even his human body. But I also do not think that we should only learn from those who perfectly align with our ethical standards. I still read Thomas Jefferson, and I still read Gandhi, and I will one day be studying John Calvin. And none of us is without our contribution to some other person's misery and oppression via things we unknowingly did, or knowingly did, or the things we left undone, or the things that got done on our behalf by other people. But I do think it is worthwhile to look if harmful ideas are roosting inside the creative works of people we term great. And I also think that efforts to just kind of erase their memory in our midst, those are short-sighted. Because once those things are out of sight, we condemn them and then put them out of sight, they eventually drift out of mind. It's a delayed way of sweeping it under the carpet. It's also short-sighted to simply ignore the misogyny or racism or violence and suppress the confession of these things, dishonestly pretending that everything's fine, even when it wasn't. When harmful people have good ideas, I think it's better to keep the whole thing in view. To notice the good and the evil. To recognize that people who do good can also do bad things. And that none of us is perfectly clean and free. And even so, people may have ideas that do good in our lives. It is very, very challenging to be honest about such things, about the whole picture, and to at least offer a way forward that is honest. It's challenging but necessary if we're going to be honest and allow a path forward where human flaws are not held against each other forever. Walking in the shadows of flawed people like Thomas Jefferson or Woodrow Wilson or Gandhi, it's less about there but for the grace of God go I, but a lot more like changing it up until it reads, there with some grace I need to go. One of the blessings of when I preach here, and it's a rare one, it's not unique to this church, but not a lot of churches do it, is that the message is not mine alone. It is shared. It is shared in dialogue with the congregation, and so my major contribution here is accomplished. And the dialogue continues with all of you, with the inspiration and insights you might be having this morning and the questions you raise. Sometimes people ask me questions as well. I may or may not have answers. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But what spoken ministry is stirring among you this morning?
Is there a, oh, go ahead.
Crystal first.
This reminds me of a breakfast conversation yesterday with Dib. We had the night before watched the first episode of Ken Burns' Benjamin Franklin, who I was surprised to learn, but probably should not have been, did own slaves, sold slaves. I mean, when he needed to part with someone for whatever reason. Later in his life, he renounced that. But our discussion, not nearly as nuanced and subtle and informative as your sermon was, so what do we do with that? I mean, what do we do with that in terms of our opinion of Benjamin Franklin? Because has countless good works, some major failings, not just having held slaves, but in the end, I don't think we really answered it for ourselves. But it strikes me this question always continues, and we should probably always let it continue. We should continue to discuss it and sort it out and try to avoid throwing out the baby with the bathwater. That's it.
But it's hard. It's much harder than just saying, well, we'll erase this person and just not talk about it again. Or
erase the bad stuff.
And we'll just pretend everything was okay.
Yeah.
Tim.
Is there a moral compass you can refer to help make decisions? The end justifies the means. I'm thinking in particular of the evangelicals who admit openly that our past president was no moral figure as an exemplar for their kids to follow, and yet he did get abortion outlawed throughout the country, and for that they support him. Does the end, where do you draw the line?
There's so many things to unpack. These are like follow-up sermons. So on one hand, there's the whole issue of like, do you follow horribly flawed leadership because they get something accomplished for you that you want accomplished? I guess that might be
doing good in the neighborhood. Well, actually, it could be either one.
It could be, depending on how you want to do the math.
Yes.
There is a concept, I think the Universalist minister and preacher Aidan Ballou, and I'm just going to throw out to you ways different people have handled this. The Universalist preacher Aidan Ballou, I think studying Gospel of Matthew, but I could be wrong, brought up that you cannot long-term achieve good through evil means, that the evil means eventually undermines the good work. The best example I can think of right now is, you may remember back a while there was a scandal involving the people who own Hobby Lobby. They were importing stolen Middle Eastern artwork, and they knew it was stolen from Iraq, sometimes labeling it clay tiles, and populating their Museum of the Bible with this stuff. And it creates all sorts of problems. If it's a research museum, you can no longer do research on these materials because the provenance is contaminated. You don't know whether it's real, and you don't know where this stuff came from. But also, it will always haunt this place that the stuff that was collected was pillaged, and they knew it. And so there's this taint that follows along the museum, and I have no idea how they have tried to resolve this. I know there was a Yale-trained archaeologist who quit her post there because she said, there's no way I can administer ethically these materials, since where I was told they were from turned out to be a lie. Another person to think about, he was both a scientist and a theologian, Emanuel Swedenborg. There's a whole religious tradition that bears his name. There were a number of Unitarians and Universalists who found Swedenborg interesting in the 1800s. Swedenborg wrote a book called Charity, the Practice of Neighborliness. I read it every year leading up to Christmas. Swedenborg would argue that you have to look at some ethical standards simply beyond yourself. In his case, he would have said it was a mystical framework around Jesus and some well-defined principles like the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Swedenborg would say that you could, both of these actually are completely evil. He said, if you do something evil, hoping to get a good result, he said it is like a pool in the desert that ends up being poisonous below the surface. And that in some cases, what that ends up really being about is that you want to look good in your charity, or that you want to manipulate somebody into being dependent upon you. Doing good in the name of evil, actually, now that I think about this, I'm not sure many people doing things that I would call evil think that it's evil at the time. And that's the really horrible part. I think about some very kind of like, we can talk about hot button issues to try to keep the wattage a little down. I'll go into the past. Those people in the United States who were owning slaves, there was a whole layer of them that said, well, owning slaves is actually a good thing. It is the natural order of things. Nations have always had slaves in the past. And you can see people in the Bible who had slaves. There's even regulations in the Bible about how you treat your slaves. And so we're just upholding the natural order of things. Plus, and you do hear some of this leaking into curriculum standards in other states. People will say, well, and those people that were enslaved, they learned useful skills. Shoeing horses and carpentry. And even I was at an art exhibit at the University of Michigan last year. It was fascinating. It was pottery made by a well-known Southern pottery company. But prior to the Civil War, most of the pottery was manufactured by slaves. And it was artistically beautiful. And there's a whole science around the art history because some of the slaves left marks on the bottom to designate that I made that. Even though they weren't supposed to like have an individual mark on there. And I bet that pottery company owner would have said, I gave them good work. And they learned a skill. Swedenborg would argue it all ends up evil in the end. But the people who are doing the enslavement said, like, this is good. Win-win. From our point of view. Of course, they don't ask the slave their opinion.
One thing that's wrong with the questions is who decides what's good and who decides what's evil. I mean, in Tim's example, some people think that abortion is evil, and other people think it's maybe occasionally necessary. So there's a flaw in the question itself.
Yeah, and if some of these things turn into very stark binaries, there's a whole lot of nuance that vanishes. Including on like that specific issue. an interview I heard with a woman in Texas who in general had been opposed to abortion until she was in a situation where she had a twin pregnancy and one of the fetuses had died. And the other one's still alive. The only way to continue that pregnancy without risking the life of the mother and the premature and probably lethal end of the pregnancy is a selective abortion that extracts the deceased. But in Texas, that was illegal. She had to leave the state. That's that nuance that gets lost in between. This tries to break things into binaries. It's still a good thinking exercise.
One of the best examples I can think of is the Civil War. If you look at some of the battlefields and what was the aftermath, the slaughter, it was just horrible. It was just horrible. The young men that were killed on both sides. I can't think of a greater evil. And Lincoln really initiated the Civil War not to end slavery, but because the South was seceding from the Union and he didn't think that was legal to do. And he thought as a president he had to stop it. So he didn't even really start the Civil War, for the reason of getting rid of slavery, but the result was that slavery was ended after the Civil War, which is a really good thing. And I've even heard some historians say that some of the white people paid the awful cost because of the evil of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
I've even heard that said. But that was, and as that insinuates, there were any number of wars after that, in my humble opinion, should not have been fought. And so we had the Civil War, why not do some other ones?
All these things are morally complicated.
Right.
We're getting beyond kind of individual persons and into groups and nations. But these things are all worthy of our spiritual attention. And I guess if I were to have anything, I would just say that there was a single take-home lesson. It is, do not take the easy path on these things and continue to hold the broad view. Try to look at as wide of the picture as you can. Because I think when we don't, we start sweeping things under the carpet. We start sweeping under things like, Gandhi promoted nonviolence, and he didn't quite pull it off in his home. And, also, what does that say about any of us? Maybe there are things where we are saying something in the world and need to do better on it in our own lives at home. Are hearts and minds free to continue? Thank you. I did want to let you know that because I've been on jury duty, I won't be able to linger terribly long because I have to run and do other things today, including meeting with some of my seminary students this afternoon. But I'll stay a little bit. Normally I like to stay a lot longer.
Always a presentation that inspires reflection, which is what Unitarian Universalists are all about. All right, our offering, Fly Me to the Moon. Today is Fish Sunday, so we have a fish container for your offerings if you want to chip in something to help the hungry in Darke County. and then a regular offering if you want to contribute to the life of the church.
I'm gonna make a change, Tim. I'm gonna do our traditional fish song here.
Okay?
It's called Love Guide Us.
Love guide us. Continue to sing with our closing hymn, number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath. Yes to life, yes to truth, and yes to love. Extinguishing the chalice is 684 at the back of your hymnal. blessings of truth be upon us, the power of love direct us and sustain us, and may the peace of this community preserve our going out and our coming in, from this time forth until we meet again. That's Duke Gray. Someone was nice enough to bring a juicy looking bundt cake back there, and there is nice coffee from Chaz and Paula, so enjoy yourselves. Next Sunday, hopefully the weather will be decent and we can get the same number of people can enjoy church as this Sunday. Our last slide is, I have to have something with a horse. So good and evil, it's the white horse fighting, the knight on the white horse fighting evil. All of you can picture yourselves as either the horse or the rider. The only confusing thing I see is, why does he have his feed bag on? I did not understand that.
Oh, I think it's a shield on the other side of the head.
Maybe that's what it is.
Not a feedback.
It looked like a feed bag to me, and I thought that's the weirdest thing I've seen. So yes, I think it probably is the shield. That makes a lot more sense. Beautiful horse. All right. That ends our service. If you need anything, please let us know. Be safe. All right. And enjoy. Have a good Sunday, and remember, if you have any moral dilemmas, you can always call Derek for help.
Gonna make a copy of that and put it like in my garage.
What's that?
I'm gonna make a copy of that.
Okay.